So for those unfamiliar with it, Spark itself is it's a protocol. It's an open source technology. It allows for I think anyone would consider it I think most people when you get into debate about what is a layer 2, like the most strictest definition usually is that it has to have unilateral exit. And Spark does have unilateral exit. So I think most people consider Spark a layer 2. So in some ways it competes with Lightning. But just like every other layer, like more broadly, layer 2, Cashew, Fedimint, Arc, all of them support Lightning. They all interoperate with Lightning. It's the glue that connects all these systems together. Spark does as well.
By unilateral exit, we mean from the layer 2 to the native layer 1?
Yeah. So okay. if you hold money in a wallet that's based on Spark, and that means you're connected to one or more servers, like Spark servers, and if they just disappear, there's a mechanism for you to get your money back on chain. We'll get into that because it's comes with an asterisk next to it.
How much?
But that mechanism does exist, and most other systems don't have that. Like the BitVM stuff does not, Cashew does not, Fedimint does not, and Liquid does not. Lightning, of course, does. Anyway, so
Lightning and Spark are the only ones that have unilateral exit.
Arc as well, which is still in R&D mode, but making progress as well. And so Spark can scale Bitcoin payments, but it also, you can issue tokens on it. And thus, we just talked about a stablecoin, so you can issue stablecoins on Spark as well. And then they're on Bitcoin. You don't need another blockchain to build a wallet that supports both Bitcoin and stablecoins. You could just use Spark. So I mentioned servers, right? So you might have a wallet on your phone, but then it connects to one or more servers. So let's talk a little bit about that. The world in the servers. There's 3 different names we're going to go through here. Vocabulary lesson. 1 is Spark entity, 2 is Spark operator, and 3 is Spark service provider. SESOSSP. Okay. So the SE, Spark entity, you can think of that as like the company or organization in charge of one of these Spark systems. There can be, just like with Cashew, Fedimint, Arc, there can be many instances of this. So one instance, the Spark entity would be responsible for it and sort of dictate the governance of how it's set up. It could also determine how many Spark operators there are, because there can be one or more Spark operators within a Spark entity. Okay. So the Spark entity can decide there's only going to be one Spark operator. And if there is only one, presumably it's the same company as the Spark entity. But there can also be multiple. So
is the Spark entity, is that a legal differentiation that can that owns the different Spark operators, or is
it's just a different role? Okay. I mean, let's go through a concrete example. So LightSpark is the first Spark entity. They have announced, at least so far, 2 Spark operators. LightSpark is one of the Spark operators, and then it's Ethan Marcus's startup is the second one. I mean, I jokingly refer to as David and Son, but they probably don't like me saying that. But it's literally true. But his son has a startup. I think it's FlashNet.
Yeah, FlashNet. Is
that right? Yeah. So 2 different companies, FlashNet and LightSpark, are Spark operators within one Spark entity. So that, I mean,
but what is the actual Spark entity then? Because like each of the operators is running a server. Is that correct?
Yeah, but the Spark entity's role is it's in charge. I mean, it determines the rules. Like for example, who determines how many operators there are?
Got it.
Who determines the onboarding process? Okay. It's a permission system. Or I mean, that part of it is a permission system.
Got it.
So like, what if I want to be a Spark operator on that? like I can't just like permissionlessly join.
I understand.
The Spark entity says, okay, here's your application, fill it out, let's sign a partnership, and then you can join.
But to create a new, oh, go ahead.
No, please.
So to create a new Spark operator, you have to go be a part of a Spark entity. But to create a new Spark entity, do you need to, is that permissionless, or do you need to go to Lightspark to create that?
That is permissionless. It's permissionless with some caveats right now. So Spark is MIT licensed open source software. The client side and the server, although the SSP, which we haven't talked about yet, that is currently closed source, and there's no published specification for what that should look like. So if you were to build your own SSP, you'd have to like reverse engineer what that API looks like, so you could plug it in to the Spark. So the Spark operator server software is open source. The SSP is not, and there's no published spec. So there'd be a bit of reverse engineering, but there'd be nothing stopping. Like the three of us could create a Spark entity right now. Each of us could have our own companies and Spark operators. We could have 3 operators. We could stand it up, create a business. Wallets could be built on it. Stablecoins could be run through it. We could charge money, and it would literally be completely independent of Lightspark, and they'd have nothing to say about it. Yeah. That's possible.
This could be one of our offerings for our treasury company.
Now, but practically speaking, we'd have to reverse engineer. I mean, there'd be a lot of engineering work for us to get that up and running.
Yeah.
And obviously Lightspark built the system so that their engineers understand the system well. And we'd have to learn.
Right. So before we jump in the Spark operator, I just want to make sure I understand the distinction between the service provider, the operator, and the entity. So the entity defines the rules. How sort of flexible is all the parameters you can change in there? As an example, and maybe an analogy would be something like the universes and Taproot assets. Is this the kind of thing where you could say on our Spark chain, you can only move dollars? You can only move this specific stable coin. Is that one of the potential parameters you consider? Or what are the parameters?
I think so. So one parameter is how many operators are there, and some considerations. Well, actually, let's go deeper in a second. So one is number of operators. 2 is what if any fees are charged by the operators. 3 is how many SSPs are there. 4 is like, what are the rules around all this? Like, who can be an SSP? Who can be, not only how many, but like who is allowed to be an SSP and an SO? And then probably like what assets are supported on that entity.
And can the entity, after it's up and running, retroactively make changes, or once it's set, that instance is set?
I think it could be changed at any point in time. Okay. And for the audience I don't work for Lightspark. I have studied it quite a bit. My team has looked at a lot of the code, so we understand it fairly well. We still have a lot of questions, but like everything I'm saying is like pretty confident, but I don't speak for the company or the technology.
Fair. Okay.
I'm still trying to get a little bit of a mental model of how to think about, like, presumably the company created entities, operators, and SSPs because they envision a certain structure or future and how that would work. Like, so, what, like you gave the example of what if the 3 of us were to make an entity and each become operators within that entity? It's like, why would we choose to each be operators in a single entity versus each create our own entity? I feel like there's like levels of abstraction that there's somebody at Lightspark who's imagining a certain structure or certain use cases, and those aren't in my mind yet. Okay.
So another thing that's not been an important part of how does Spark work, how does it get the scaling impact that it has? It is based on a technology called Statechains, which Ruben Thompson invented in 2018 or 2019. And when he on like a Medium post, and I remember when he posted it, I read it, and I liked Statechains a lot. Back when Medium was actually used. I read a lot of your Medium posts too back then. But anyway, Statechains, I always felt was like a really good building block. It had a nice set of properties where it is trusted, but you get a lot better off-chain scaling than Lightning. You can basically lock up Bitcoin in a Bitcoin transaction, and then you can send that Bitcoin from, like, I can send it to Max can send it to DK off chain. And you know, without a lot of the drawbacks to Lightning, but the big drawback to Statechains is a level of trust. You need a server, a state chain like entity or operator, basically what the Spark operator is. And then if I send money to Max, so there's a unilateral exit. So Max would have a transaction that if the server goes away, he can still get his money back. But Max is trusting. There is one way to steal Max's money now. If I, the previous owner, collude with the server, we have key material that can be combined, and we can unilaterally exit.
The previous owner of what, of the Bitcoin?
Yeah. So if my wallet, if I have money and I pay you, if I then collude with the operator,
got it. Okay.
I can steal what you believe is your money.
You can double spend.
Now, if my keys are deleted or the operator's keys are deleted, then it's not possible to steal your money.
Got it.
So you are trusting. So the operator can say, hey, I've written the code to delete the keys. Upon transfer, those keys that were associated with me are deleted. So the operator can write that code, run that code, make that public statement, but you're trusting that they're actually doing that.
And there's not another like sort of nefarious backdoor. For example, maybe in the future I like have a camera or even in my contact lens and take a photo of the key, so it's not even on the computer.
You mean you as a rogue employee of that operator?
Sure, or the operator themselves, or rogue employee.
One, you're trusting the operator that they don't lie, cheat, steal. 2, you're trusting that no rogue employee does that. 3, you're trusting that like some external hacker like North Korea or something isn't getting into that system, changing the code to not delete the keys, and then be able to steal all the money that flows through that system after that point.
Right.
So that's what you're trusting. But you get really nice scaling properties for that trade-off. So that's Statechains technology. That's how Spark works. Now, that's a preface to what you asked, David, which is like, why have all this complexity about multiple operators? Like, why not just have one? Why isn't an entity and operator the same thing and only have one operator? So a benefit to multiple operators is that if you have like 2 operators, both would have to cheat. Like both would have to change their code to not delete the keys in order to steal funds and collude with the previous owner.
So then it's like a federation.
It's
like the properties of Liquidit or Fedimint or some of these things.
Yep. And so you can do, like, I believe their current one is a 2 of 2.
Right.
If you wanted to do a threshold where, let's say you have 4 operators, then you would need the trust 2.
Okay.
But you won't. But then the nice thing then is, one of the operators doesn't have to sign each transaction, like if they have downtime or something. So you get the resilience of threshold, but your trust goes from 1 to 2. You have to trust 2. If it's 2 of 2 or 3 of 3, you only have to trust that at least one operator is honest.
And in theory, you could be that operator.
The end user.
Well, for most end users, that's not the case. But let's say you were a business and you're like, I don't want to trust other businesses. But if you're the business, if I'm, for example, Google and Stripe, right? And we're talking about permissionless or credibly neutral. If you say I'm one of the operators and therefore I trust that I'm not going to mess up, then I know that, my system is secure.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So that's like, and then also it helps the regulatory posture as well, because LightSpark intends for their Spark entity to be no KYC, that it's not an MSB, and I believe the argument is, well, they can't steal customer funds. Like, here's the code, we've developed the system. No one entity can steal the funds, and LightSpark itself, that company, can't steal the funds unilaterally. And so they're they're not an MSB and they don't need KYC. So I think it's an important part of the regulatory story as well. As is unilateral exit, because another thing is like even if we go away, we disappear, we turn the server off or whatever, we're told to turn the server off, customers can still get their money. So I think it's a pretty strong regulatory